Talky, flocky, flippy, floppy, yippee,
Talky,
yappy.
flocky, flippy, floppy. I like it.
Is it going to be, I mean, is it all right?
I'll fix it in post.
And the home of the brave. Game on!
Welcome to episode 41 of the Hit the Deck podcast, where we talk deck hockey, street hockey, ball hockey. It's hockey in sneakers. It has been another week and another podcast for your very ears. We are happy, so happy to deliver. We're so happy that you elected to download the podcast and join us for this episode. I am, of course, Gary. How are you, James?
I'm doing well, my friend, and how are you?
I'm doing all right. I'm feeling all right. Oh, actually, I'm a little hot, which is very surprising because it's been so cold here, and now all of a sudden it's very, very hot. And then I think tomorrow it's going to get very cold again, and my poor brain is so very confused.
It's not just you, man. It's Mother Nature's just screwing with us over here on the East Coast because January, on average, is very, very cold in New York. And exactly, I think as the recording of this podcast, it was around the low 50s or thereabouts or high 40s.
It was in the 60s today. And
it really got that warm? Wow.
Yeah, and like this past weekend, we're recording on Thursday. On Sunday, it was like 18 degrees. I don't get it.
After a bit of a snow flurry, too. We had a few inches of snow.
Yeah, we got a few inches of snow. It was crazy.
I don't know, man. Just pick a season, please.
Yeah. People need to know how to maintain their rinks.
Exactly.
Hockey is a cold weather sport.
Unless Mother Nature just wants us all to have pneumonia and be done with it. I don't know.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. But enough out of us. Why don't we jump right into the starting lineup so we can get started? And for tonight's starting lineup, as always, I am your American Rhino, number 35, Gary McComiskey in goal, and on defense,
I'm number 4, James Sajazi.
All right. So, James, how's everything going?
It's going well, and we'll get into that more as the podcast progresses. So would like to let everybody know what is on deck, if possible.
Oh, I would be my sincere pleasure to have you tell us what's on deck.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, James.
A player's not supposed to leave the bench unless his coach says it's okay.
No, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to throw you for a loop. I usually give you the go-ahead, and I was remiss in doing so tonight. But please, go right out there and tell us what's on deck, if you would.
Thank you, sir.
Yo.
Hello, goodbye. The NHL regular season is a grind, plain and simple, and forget about the Stanley Cup playoffs. But even supermen need recovery time. So, starting this season, the league finally implemented the much-needed time off with a bye week for each team. Dreams do come true. You had to have a most epic New Year's Eve to even compete with what George Alves did. And easy there, Junior. 4 words. Incredible. Gary and I will do a quick review of the amazing World Junior Championship Tournament won by Team USA. And that's what's on deck.
Thank you, James.
You're welcome, sir.
All
Thank
right.
you for the opportunity.
Now, before we go on and really dig deep into the podcast, there is, of course, something, if you are a hockey fan in New York, especially a Rangers fan, you know that this past week we unfortunately lost Detective Stephen MacDonald, who, if you're not aware, was a NYPD detective who 30 years ago got unfortunately shot in the line of duty, became a quadriplegic, confined to a wheelchair, and rather than letting that sour his outlook on life, he instead became an ambassador for the NYPD. He was an incredible, inspirational guy. He forgave the guy who shot him and crippled him, and he the hockey connection is that the Rangers, the New York Rangers, were so inspired by his story and his fight that they developed something called the Stephen MacDonald Extra Effort Award that they have given out every year since the 1987 season. And that goes to not the highest scorer or the best player. It goes to the Ranger every year, the Ranger who is voted by the fans as going above and beyond, the one who's displayed the most effort on a team, the standout, because that spirit is emblematic of the spirit that Detective Stephen MacDonald embodied every day. He was an incredible person. His son could easily have seen his father in the state that he was in and decided the last thing he wanted was anything to do with the city, but he followed instead in his footsteps, and he also became an NYPD officer. And it's just the whole family is really remarkable. And the Rangers, hockey, New York, everybody has really lost a true hero this week. So we just wanted to take a minute or a few minutes here at the top of the show to acknowledge him. On behalf of James and myself, we'd like to pray for the family and for the soul of Detective MacDonald. And it's a dark week, I guess. We've lost one of the good ones.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much for that, Mr. Gary Mac, sir. We did post stuff on our Facebook page as well. And the American Rhino even left a heartfelt farewell on our Facebook page as well. I believe Twitter, too, for the late Detective MacDonald. Rest in peace. And, yeah, just to reiterate what Gary said, we lost a fellow great Ranger fan, a big Met fan, wonderful police officer, and he was graduated to detective, and just a wonderful guy all around, and above all, an excellent Catholic. And as Gary again said, the greatest thing I think he did, besides that wonderful attitude he had and the example that he led, was being able to forgive somebody who didn't even seek forgiveness, that did something so unnecessarily despicable against him and his family, too. He wasn't even on the force for 2 years. It was like a few days before his second anniversary of being a police officer, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, like Gary said, we lost a good one. So heaven up there, Detective MacDonald, I hope you're standing proud and tall, and we appreciate the example that you led. And the New York Rangers, I tip my cap to them for being so embracing of him and appreciative of his being such a huge devoted Ranger fan that he was, and incorporating his great life for everybody to know and see, especially not only New Yorkers, but everybody around the country. So thanks for that, Mr. Gary Mac, sir, and God bless the MacDonald family.
Thank you, James.
But sure. So from there, we'll try and lighten things up a little bit. But,
yeah.
Gary and I try and be as honest and fair as we can on this podcast, and that's something that's near and dear to our hearts and we feel very deeply about, too. So we just wanted to share that with everybody who may have not been aware of Mr. MacDonald's passing. So, but on the other hand, to get back to the podcast at hand, I guess, how many times can you say the word hand? But
speaking of the Rangers, James.
Yeah, that too. This season has been kind of unique in that the World Cup of Hockey was this year, and they purposely schedule that to coincide with the preseason and then going to the regular season of the NHL. We have the All-Star break coming up in a couple of weeks. And also on the other level, which we'll get into later, the Junior World Championships were going on and stuff. But for the NHLers, and this not being an Olympic year, the World Cup was pretty intense and added on to an already very difficult NHL grind of a schedule. So Gary pointed this out too, and we both kind of heard about this officially at the same time. A couple of years ago, it was implemented in a rule that the Players Union was granted this bye, so 5 days off in a row for every team in the NHL. And it's a guaranteed 5 days off, too. They don't even have practices during that time. So it's specifically designed, and every NHL player, and DEK hockey player, too, for that matter, plays with a nagging injury of some sort. and the schedule is rough and tough. Yeah, okay, people look on the outside looking in, say, oh, they only play 3 times a week or whatever, but you try it. Hockey's intense. It doesn't let up. These guys are in phenomenal shape, and the travel on top of everything else is not that easy either, especially if you have back-to-back games or if you're playing an afternoon game and then you have a night game, this, that, and the other thing. So it all adds up. So the league finally implemented the 5 guaranteed days off for each team in agreement of the new current 3-on-3 All-Star Game format.
Yeah, so basically, yeah. You may not have known this if your team has not had their bye yet. So as James and I didn't know this, so let's rewind to last weekend. I read it in the paper. James saw it at the end of the last Ranger game. But basically, what happened is we were sitting there, and it says, "Oh, the Rangers are entering their bye week this week," and it's like, "What?" So hockey. If you're a hockey fan, your football teams get a bye if they're good for the playoffs, or at some point in the season they get a bye too. So they get a week off. Football is not hockey. Hockey teams don't get a bye week, or do they? So as James said, rewind back to last year, before last season, what happened was when the league wanted to switch to this 3-on-3 All-Star format, and they also wanted to do the World Cup of Hockey before this season, the Players Union said, okay, well, you got to give us something. So they negotiated that they'd have this bye week inserted into their schedule. So now every NHL team between now and, well, I guess early January and the end of February, every team in the NHL is going to get a week off at some point during that stretch. So, I think it's good for the league, honestly. As James, you were saying, the nagging injuries. And honestly, I think you can get mentally burned out just as much as you get physically beat up. Having that 1 week to decompress, spend time with your family, spend time, at Disney World or whatever you want to do, just unwind. I think that can work wonders. It's not long enough for you to really get cold and lose your edge, but it's enough time that you can recharge the batteries a little bit and get your head back in the game. So, good for the league, good for the Players Union, good for everybody. And I'm glad the NHL implemented this, and I hope it continues going forward, whether there's a World Cup or whether they change the All-Star format or what.
Yeah, I completely agree, because it's a well-timed point for the bye weeks as well, because as the All-Star game is coming up, so hopefully you get a few days off there, with the exception of the players participating in the All-Star game and the skills competitions and such. But to get that mindset and get ready for the postseason stretch, because if you do get to the Stanley Cup playoffs, it's 2 solid months of competition, and an extremely high level of competition as well. If you're lucky enough or good enough or all of the above to get to the Stanley Cup finals, it's 2 months. So in order to get there, you have to qualify for it. So a lot of teams on the cusp, either looking for home ice advantage or just trying to get into the postseason at all, they just put the pedal to the metal. And like we said, these guys are supermen. They're in the best shape in the world, but they're human beings. And hopefully they're not juicing or doing any of that cheating stuff. You can only do so much, and the body needs rest. You need to sleep. That's part of the way the human body works naturally. So absolutely, I agree. And to Gary's great point about the mental recovery as well, as us being Ranger fans, Gary and I, we could even see it in the team, and I'm sure everybody saw it in your team as well, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, that there were a couple of back-to-back blowout losses that the Rangers suffered. And they were kind of out of the blue, you could just see that they didn't have their legs under them, or Lundqvist was a bit off. And then they responded big time coming back because they're professionals and they have pride and stuff like that. But exactly, it's way too much to ask these guys to go through an entire 82-game season with the World Cup included and the All-Star break, and then try and participate for the Stanley Cup Finals. It's not humanly possible.
I would also argue that aside from the physical rest and recharge that these guys get, and mental rest and recharge benefit that they get from that, I would argue that this is going to lead to a higher level of competition at the end of the season, because coaches are going to feel less inclined, or perhaps better way of saying it is they won't feel the pressure as much to rest their guys at the end of the season. Because a lot of times what you see, if there's a team that has a comfortable point lead, then the last few games of the season, they're going to sit their top stars, and maybe they don't win a game that they otherwise would have won. And a lot of times those teams wind up playing, just by chance, a team that's on the bubble. So I think this is also going to have kind of a butterfly effect on the teams that make the playoffs. So it's not going to allow the teams that are just kind of squeaking in by luck. It's going to wind up being the best teams that wind up making the playoffs, in my opinion.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I agree that should benefit that as well. And even from a fan point of view, too, if you know you have tickets for the last couple of games of the season and maybe your team is going to the playoffs or maybe they're not, if they are going to the playoffs, exactly, chances are that their stars will be rested, and then you paid all that money and you're not seeing your favorite player or something like that. But what it's more important about is any NHL fan would trade in not seeing his favorite player live for a Stanley Cup run, if not winning the Cup too. But anyway, so just to give you an idea for the tri-state area, for the three teams over here in the New York, New Jersey area, the New York Islanders had their bye week on January 1st through the 5th. The New York Rangers have their bye week at the recording of this podcast from January 8th through the 12th. And the New Jersey Devils will have their bye week on February 7th, which happens to be my niece's birthday, through February 11th. So you got that to look forward to, or at least be warned about. So all the teams have them, and I agree with Gary. I think it's nothing but good that they have implemented a bye week, much deserved bye week for the NHL.
Do you happen to have the Kings bye week for our good buddy Mike?
Excellent point. I'm glad you brought that up. And I do, as a matter of fact. That will be February 10th through the 14th.
All right. So there you go, Mike. You can get some sleep that week.
Well said.
The Kings being a West Coast team, Mike doesn't get to sleep very much on the nights when the Kings are playing at home. So, or in their division. So,
that's right.
There you go. You have that to look forward to. It'll be a happy Valentine's Day because you can sleep in.
And
you'll be happy. Your girlfriend, your fiance, right? Aren't they engaged? Mike, I'm so sorry. I don't remember.
Yes.
I think
yes.
they are. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
You and your lady friend will be happy, and then everybody will be happy. All right. Fantastic.
As well as the LIQ.
Yeah.
Because he'll be nice and rested for our games.
Hey, I wanted to bring this up. It's just something that occurred to me. Regarding deck hockey, there's a lot of leagues that don't have, obviously deck hockey isn't played at the level of the NHL, but there's a lot of leagues that don't have that kind of long rest period between seasons. I was just talking to my buddy Anthony the other day, and there was like 2 weeks between the championship game in the league that he plays in and the start of the next season. So, I wonder, see, it's hard because the NHL is just one regulated body and they have a set season. Deck hockey leagues, it's whenever you can get it in and whenever it's convenient, whenever this facility is available, blah, blah, blah. There's so many different factors with so many different leagues, but I wonder, it's not something you could really enforce, but I think, especially given the weekend warrior aspect to deck hockey, I think kind of a mandatory rest period or, even a bye week in your season, something like that, I think that could really benefit your everyday player too. I don't know if these arenas where the games are hosted would be willing to implement something like that because it could be a potential loss of revenue for them. But I think health-wise, that could definitely benefit guys like us as well.
Yeah, great point, because we do get hurt as well. How many times have you heard Gary talk about the many ailments that he's had to deal with and still play at the top level that he does, and he doesn't complain about it, doesn't whine about it, he just deals with it, and away you go. And we all have had injuries here or there, or twisting an ankle or whatever. So, yeah, we only get maybe a quarter of the time to play as another professional or whatever the case is, but we going to our day jobs, if you will, all of that stuff does add up. So
our level of conditioning isn't nearly as high, and I would say in most cases. Obviously, some leagues are pretty serious, and you get like your CrossFit nuts, and you're really well conditioned teenagers, not teenagers, but well, maybe in some cases, but you're young guys who can really go. But I think the majority of us are probably guys like us who just, do it, aren't in bad shape, but aren't in peak physical condition either. So I think something like that would be even more helpful for guys like us. But maybe I'm just being selfish.
No, that's a great point too. One of the things with like Gary's excellent catchphrase, "Don't be that guy," is you're playing deck hockey for a reason, because we're not NHLers for one thing, and a lot of people aren't able to skate, either rollerblade or ice skate. So you can play deck hockey though. And if we were professional athletes, we would be doing something else for a living, so it's true.
Yeah, all right. And speaking of people who are not professional athletes that wind up doing something else for a living, why don't you tell us about that magical New Year's Eve that you mentioned earlier, James?
Yeah, this is a man that's taken a page from your heart, too, as a matter of fact. Mr. George Alves is the equipment manager for the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, he's now referred to as equipment manager / turned emergency backup / turned starter.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty incredible New Year's Eve magic.
Yeah, really. I hope he didn't drop the ball. Sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. The Carolina Hurricanes were playing the Tampa Bay Lightning in Tampa on New Year's Eve of 2016, going into this year, 2017, just to clarify. And the Cam Ward was out with an injury. So their regular backup, Eddie Lack, was sick in the afternoon. So being in Tampa, they didn't have a team affiliate close enough to get one of their goalies to come up and be the third stringer emergency goalie. The rule of the NHL, as Gary had stated in the past, is that you have to have at least one backup goalie, if not two, like the emergency one if the backup gets hurt or whatever the case is. So the backup goalie was out. So now it fell on Mr. Alves' shoulders, who is his day job is the equipment manager. So what happened was there was just 7.6 seconds left in the game when the backup goalie for Carolina got hurt, and Eddie Lack wasn't around. So obviously Cam Ward wasn't there, and Mr. Alves was dressed just in case. 7.6 seconds left in the game, so he was going back to the locker room to do his equipment manager job when he got a tap on the shoulder, or at least a yell to come back from his head coach saying, "We need you. Gear up and get in there." So hastily, Mr. Alves signed a $500 contract. I think he did it over his phone somehow. Modern technology is amazing. So he signed the contract, $500 to be an official NHLer and Carolina Hurricane. He got his own official jersey, which he got to keep, number 40. But the best part, and this is really, Gary, you're going to love this more than anything else, the mask he wore, he painted himself.
So I have a question. So he's the equipment manager. Does that mean he had to stitch his own jersey?
He probably did. They didn't. I didn't hear that, but it would make sense. He's the equipment manager, so sure.
Now, the painted mask, is that like something he just had laying around, or did he do it up just for the occasion?
Well, he does. He did participate in practices with the Hurricanes, so He has his own gear, and I'm assuming that he had, because the mask is really well done and well painted. It's a professional looking mask as your own. Nobody's going to look at my mask up close and think it was professionally done, but carry on. All right. But he was ready to go. So he does face practice shots and things like that. So, it was an official good NHL quality mask that he has used in the past. I'm assuming, or logically, that would make sense. So he was good to go. He didn't just have to paint it up or do anything special with it. It was there, and he was in there. So 7.6 seconds better than I'll ever get that he actually got to face NHL ice time.
All right. Well, did he give up any goals in that 7.6 seconds?
He did not.
He stoned him?
His save percentage is 1,000. No one,
right.
the defense stepped up for him and, made sure that there were no clear shots on him. So the funny thing was George was quoted as saying that, everybody dreams about this. He's dreamt about it.
Sure.
And, but when it happened, he just went blank, so at least that's the benefit of having YouTube and so many people with cell phones and things and modern technology of, recording every little thing of everybody's life, and especially in the NHL. So I guess he's able to relive it with some footage from all of the news feeds and the NHL network and such. So great story. And like we said, as long as you keep working hard, keep hope alive, you never know. So maybe your chance will come.
Yeah. Plus, he wasn't really in there long enough to get scouted. So if he has to step in there again, he's got a pretty good chance at nobody knowing his weaknesses.
Yeah, right. That's true. So good to have a secret weapon or two on your bench.
Yeah. It's like, you haven't seen the Mighty Ducks, so I can't. Whatever. Never mind. Forget it.
Don't waste it on me. I mean, I'm sure people out there have seen the Ducks, so go for it.
No, it was stupid anyway. It's one of these examples of, a dumb thing that happens in a movie that could never, ever, ever happen in real life. But at one point, like late in the game, the whole team huddles in the middle of the ice and like whatever. And then they go out and it's revealed that they actually switched out the goalie for one of their best shooters. So the goalie has the puck and then suddenly rips off the mask and takes a shot and scores the game winning or tying or whatever. I don't remember goal. And it's, but the secret weapon is what I was saying,
Gotcha.
It wasn't worth it. Let's just move on.
Pardon my ignorance.
No, it's fine.
All right.
What else? Speaking of youngsters playing hockey, James, it's like I've always said on this podcast, if you don't have a segue,
Make one!
That was brilliant. There was another great save on your part, man. I loved it. So, in case you haven't heard, we mentioned it last broadcast or last edition of Hit the Deck because as we were recording, the game was going on, but Team USA has won the 2016-2017 World Junior Championships. Absolutely. They did it in spectacular fashion, being a perfect 7-0, winning at least two of the games, not counting the gold medal game, in overtime and shootouts. And to get to the final game with their perfect 7-0 record, they knocked off, for the first time ever, Russia in a playoff round. So they just went uphill as steep as it could get, and they met every challenge and overcame it with flying colors. Really an incredible tournament, a great team to watch, a lot of good young guys out there. Hopefully that will be in the NHL soon. And we have made some notes of some local guys, or at least the kids that were on the team in local area of where Gary and I are, and or are drafted by the teams in the tri-state area, i.e. the Rangers, Devils, and the Islanders. So a couple of kids from Long Island were on the team, a couple of defensemen, thank you very much. Just want to get that out there. In Joe Ciccone and the alternate captain, Charlie McAvoy.
Nice. So,
they were, I believe they grew up together, too. They were good friends. So the two Long Island guys on Team USA. And the Islanders and Devils each have a forward on Team USA in Kiefer Bellows and Joey Anderson, respectively, Islander and Devil. So two guys to look forward to for our friends over there who root for the Islanders and the Devils. Getting to the final was remarkable. But the game itself, the gold medal game, Team USA had to overcome two goal deficits. So twice they were down 2-0. They were down by 2 goals. Once they were down 2-0, and then they were down 4-2 with around 5 minutes to play in the third period. So it looked like it was in the bag for Canada. So miraculously, Team USA tied it with about 3 minutes left. And then overtime was simply heart-stopping. And both goalies were absolutely fantastic. And it's a case where it's a shame that one team has to lose because they both played so well. And for the record, I'm not a fan of determining something so important on shootouts. I'm speaking as a soccer fan, too, in this aspect, like the World Cup and things like that. When the stakes are so high and teams are playing so well and you're so evenly matched and the sport is just at its zenith, it's just played to perfection and what you dream about and why you play and why you watch and all that stuff, to be determined on chance, especially for soccer, because the goalie basically has no chance whatsoever.
Yeah.
In hockey, it's a little bit more of an even battle, but still boiling it down to just one-on-one when it's not natural. If it's a breakaway, fine, that's one thing, or even a penalty shot. But to determine it on shootouts is quite sad. But
yeah, well, yeah. I mean, it's luck. I mean, speaking from experience, a shootout is luck. You know, it's you just have to. Well, it's not entirely luck. There is skill involved because it's kind of a chess match between the goalie and the shooter. But really, it's if the goalie can stay with the shooter and force him or her to not make a great shot, just shoot it into a place where the goalie can cover. I mean, this sounds obvious, and it is, but then the goalie stops the puck. If the shooter can either fake out the goalie somehow or just rip off a good enough shot, then the goalie, there's nothing they can really do. There's skill. There's obviously skill, but I should say it's as much luck as it is skill. It's a toss up, really, and that's why you see so many of these shootouts. Like, some of them are decided immediately, and some of them can go for rounds and rounds and rounds, because a team can score 3 goals in a row, and then they can not score a goal for 5, 6, 7 rounds, whatever. I'm sorry. I kind of went off. I went off a little bit there, but the point is, you're right. A tournament like that shouldn't be decided by something so arbitrary.
Exactly. And the other thing, too, about that is, Gary and I have said this many and many a time, to just let you know what the mentality of a good goalie is. And Carter Hart was the goalie for the Team Canada, and he was fantastic. And maybe I'm a little biased because my favorite wrestler was Bret the Hitman Hart, and he spells the name the same way, H-A-R-T. Please, any Canadian fans out there listening, I'm not being condescending. I'm being totally genuine. I'm putting my USA heart on my sleeve away for now.
So to speak.
But he just made one mistake, and it wasn't even a mistake. He got beat through the 5-hole on an excellent shot, and that was it. One goal given up by either Carter Hart or Tyler Parsons was Team USA's goalie, and that's what determined it. So the reason why they got to overtime was that both goalies were standing on their heads, and the goals that were scored during the regulated game were phenomenal goals. I mean, there was one shot that a Canadian player took that went top shelf on Parsons. There was no angle. I still have seen the replay a dozen times. I don't know how the puck went in, because Parsons was perfectly positioned. He cut off the angle, and the puck still went in. So just intense play, end to end, and great defense and wonderful offense, obviously, and a lot of passing. It was, oh boy, it was so much fun to watch.
I feel for him, because I've been there on, and I've even talked to you about this. I don't remember if we've talked about it on the podcast, but yeah, I've gotten beat on shots when I've said, how is that physically possible? Like, you eliminate every corner, and it still somehow finds its way past you. It's that, honestly, as a goalie, that's not even a case of you tip your hat to the guy. It's, how did you do that? Like, what just happened?
Yeah, really. So, like you said, it's we're not downplaying any of the skill of any of these wonderful players on any level of ice hockey. But it is a lot of luck involved, because I've even heard that numerous times in post-game interviews and things like that, where they asked a player, were you shooting for that particular spot? And he said, no, I was going top shelf and it went through the wickets or something. So, for as skilled as these guys are and as trained as they are, that happens. So that's not fair. But Carter Hart really, to put all of that weight and pressure on his shoulders. And I believe the tournament MVP was Canadian defenseman Thomas Chabot. He won the MVP of the entire tournament, and he got stonewalled by Tyler Parsons as well. Mm-hmm. So then you take those two guys that had just phenomenal, excellent tournaments, and then if you have to boil it down to those two unfair moments, I just don't think that's right. But anyway, I have no say in that. And Theo Fleury was even quoted on Twitter saying that it shouldn't have come to. It wasn't sour grapes either. I felt that it was being honest and fair, but because other people criticized Team Canada, well, they didn't mind when they won the gold a couple of years ago on shootouts or whatever the case is. But that takes nothing away from the tournament. And I think these players, when they look back on it, will see how well they did and how monumental the tournament was. And really, Team USA, they earned it. They earned it because it was on Canadian soil. And they were all by themselves. They slayed every dragon that they could have to win their well-earned fourth World Junior Championship. So congratulations to Team USA.
I just don't understand why this tournament would go to the shootout. Like, why would it be designed that way? Did the arena have a curling tournament later in the day that they just couldn't wait on? Like, I don't, why would you design it? I don't understand why it's not like the NHL where, for the playoffs, you just play until there's a winner. Or even if you don't do it for the whole playoffs, for the final.
Exactly.
Final game. Why can't you just play sudden death overtime?
Yeah, and overtime wasn't even a full 20 minutes either. It's like, make up your mind. It's true. It was like a regular game. And for the stakes being that high and for the dream matchup of the best team in Team USA versus Team Canada. And let's be honest, man. I mean, Canada was just unbeatable on any international level.
Yeah.
And just to put it in perspective, the country of Canada, no matter what hockey team that they place, men, women, kids, anybody in between and whatever, Canada won the last 3 of 4 Olympic tournaments, including the last 2 in a row. So gold medalists there. Yeah. The women, Yeah. I'm not happy to say that either.
Grumble.
Yeah. The Canadian women won their last 4 Olympics in a row. Yeah. So outdoing the men by 4 in a row versus just 3 of 4. So you got to catch up there, guys.
You know what, though? Now that we have the Women's Hockey League here in America, hopefully in the next few years, the quality of female hockey athletes will improve. Not that our girls haven't been pretty good as it is, but I remember I forget if it was the last Olympics or the one before, but there was a really, really close game between them and Canada. But hopefully our level of play can increase and improve with that resource that now is available to our girls. Sorry, please continue.
No, that's excellent points, because as we've said many a time, the 1980 Olympic team inspired so many American kids to play hockey and get better at it and have a lot of pride in the sport and your country. And that's what makes you better generation past generation. So that's what, I mean, you've heard that a million times too, when the kids that won the 2017 tournament said the same thing. It's like the same thing with the 80s team, and they'll walk together forever because they're champions now, and that's that. So you can never take that away from them. So you see that. It's inspiring, and lets the kid know if you're playing high school hockey or if you're playing roller hockey or whatever the case is, oh, geez, those guys did it. I have a chance too. And then you get better. So exactly the same thing for the ladies, man. And the Team Canada I don't want to sound like sour grapes here, but they're embedded. I mean, hockey is in their DNA. So Team USA on any level is not far behind them either. And obviously Sweden is up there and Russia, for gosh sakes.
Sure.
They've had a heck of a stamp on international hockey as well. So to get to that level, you need to practice hard and raise your level of playability. And that's how you get better and you're able to compete with these professionals or at least these players that have just don't know life without having a stick in his hand and skates on his feet, So that's what you need to do. So we got we're rooting for you, for the ladies out there, and somebody has to stop the Canadian women, right? I mean, they can't win them all.
Yeah.
But anyway, Canada also, getting back to the men, they won the last 2 World Cups in a row, and this most recent World Cup back in September was in Canada, played as well, but they were undefeated. They didn't lose a game. So also for the getting back to the junior championships, Canada has a record 16 World Junior Championships. I believe that's a record. I'm not sure if Russia and the USSR combined may have more, but 16 is pretty ridiculous too. It's 4 times what Team USA has. But the weird thing is, out of the 5 times Team USA has made the final, they met Canada, I believe, 3, including this past championship, and they beat them 2-1 out of the entire meeting head-to-head for the gold. So that's pretty impressive too, to step up when the stakes are that high and there's no tomorrow, and 1 game as well. There's no series, so that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, sure. And just before we wrap up, James, I want to ask you one thing. Just going back to Carter Hart, please tell me at some point in his career he has played for the Calgary Hitmen.
Yeah, I definitely have to look that up.
That would, of course, make him Carter the Hitman Hart.
Yeah. Okay. Let's just say he did, because he had to have.
All right.
Okay. I don't care if it's true or not, but we'll look it up to make sure. But if he didn't, then he had better sign a contract now.
Yeah, really.
So, exactly. Come on now. It's like having a team, the Undertakers, and not having the dead man himself show up. And,
yeah.
Our other favorite wrestler of all time.
Although the Cavs did have the dead man show up, and LeBron James was not so welcoming.
Huh?
Oh, you didn't hear about that story? Oh,
no.
Okay. So basically, I think in the finals, or at least the playoffs last year, LeBron James was photographed wearing an Undertaker jersey, and I guess it kind of went viral. So for their home opener, when they raised the championship banner or something, the Undertaker himself visited the team, the locker room, before the game in full dress. He was the Undertaker. He showed up, and a lot of people took pictures, and it was cool or whatever. And then LeBron James refused to meet him. And after the game, he said something like, "Oh, I don't appreciate people trying to ride my coattails and get publicity off of me. So that's why I didn't meet him."
AKA LeBron James was a big chicken, and he was too afraid to see the dead man and look up to a man that could just squash him. So
yeah, okay.
It's okay to admit that you're a coward, LeBron. Okay.
Yeah,
Queen James, we should start referring to him.
Look, I know that LeBron James is a big deal in the NBA, and he's a pretty big celebrity in his own right. But I don't think the Undertaker, who's been one of the biggest stars in wrestling for the last 26 years, was showing up just to try and ride LeBron's coattails. He's got better things to do. I think he, as you well know, the man is big on respect, and he probably saw him wearing his shirt and said, "You know what? As a show of respect, I'm going to show up and thank the guy personally, and maybe we'll make a cool little moment. Not like, oh, let me get in the papers, because honestly, LeBron, grow up."
Right. And one final nail to put in LeBron's coffin. Undertaker's not running around with any stupid Cavalier jersey with James on the back either. Thank you very much. So rest in peace there, LeBron. And check your ego at the door. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, an NHLer would never be that stupid, by the way. But that's a whole other issue. Getting back to the World Juniors.
Sorry, I didn't mean to derail the conversation.
Did not know. That's Carter Hart. and hockey and Bret Hart in Canada, they're all woven into one beautiful sweater, if you will. Okay, I won't say jersey.
No, I like it. I like it.
Yeah. So Thomas Chabot, again, who was the MVP of the tournament, was the first ever defenseman to earn that honor in the World Junior Championship history. So the Ottawa Senators cannot wait to bring that 19-year-old man up to get to the NHL and partner with Mr. Carlson. That would be one heck of a dynamic duo on defense.
All right. And speaking of the Ottawa Senators, James, I just want to revisit a quick rebound shot here from last week. Last week on the podcast, I asked, where did the first NHL game take place? And I threw it out to you, the listener. I said, please let us know if you know, where did the first NHL game take place? And of course, none of you let us know because you know as well as I do, just Google it. It's not your podcast. You're not going to do my job for me, and I respect that. So I did Google it. And in fact, there are two candidates because the first two games took place on the same night, or the same day, actually. I don't know for a fact it was even nighttime because I wasn't able to find a starting time for either game. But I guess it was 99 years ago, or, 99 and a half, almost 100. No, it was 99. It was December. So it was December of 1917. So that's such a long time ago. So, but there were no records as to the starting time. So the two candidates are in Ottawa. The Ottawa Senators hosted the Montreal Canadiens, the Habs.
Oh, wow.
In one of the first NHL games. Montreal won. And the second candidate, and this is the one I'm inclined to think would be considered, if you had to pin it down, would be considered the first official NHL game, if only by virtue of the fact that they give credit for the first goal ever scored in the NHL, which was scored a minute into the game. That was played in Montreal. The Montreal Wanderers was the team versus the Toronto Arenas, I guess that's how it's spelled. And the goal was scored a minute into the game. So, either they had the exact same start time and, Montreal just scored first, or that game was earlier in the day. Because I think the first goal in the Canadian Senators game was like 6 minutes into the game or something like that. So the other game, I'm just going to give them the edge. So, although interesting story about the Montreal Wanderers, they only played, I think, 4 NHL games. And that opening night game, the first game in NHL history, was the only game they ever won. And the reason the club folded, their arena, which they shared with the Habs, burned down.
Ooh. And
the Habs were able to play at a different arena, but the Wanderers decided to just pack it in. So that's, that's your little bit of NHL history for right here on the Hit the Deck podcast.
Thank you, the American Professor Rhino.
No problem. I'm happy to oblige.
Last minute remaining in the podcast.
Thank you, Pops. Okay, so we wrap up another episode of Hit the Deck, episode 41. I sincerely hope that you have found it worthwhile. I thank you so very much for listening. I know James also appreciates it. I would encourage you to keep listening, and to make sure you keep listening, subscribe to this podcast if you have not already done so on iTunes and Stitcher and whatever other podcasting service you might get your podcasts from. Visit our page, our Podbean page at hitthedeck.com. Tell your friends, spread the good word about the Hit the Deck podcast, because as we said last week, we want to make this thing huge and we need your help to do it. We are ever so much in your debt. We are also in the debt of Pops for being the voice of the podcast. We want to thank Anthony Sajazi for providing music for the podcast, the LIQ for sound effects, you once again for listening, because that's the most important thing, that you listen and continue to listen. And really, it's the only reason we do this, as I've said. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have anything you'd like to reach out to us about, start a conversation, correct us on something. If there's a topic you want to talk about, if you want to come on the podcast and talk about your league, shoot us an email at hitthedeck@gmail.com. And just to clarify, because I have not done so in a while, even though it says it right there in the title of the podcast, I want to just remind you, DEK is DEK. So if you type Hit the Deck, DECK, you are not going to get us. So Hit the Deck, DEK@gmail.com, Hit the Deck Pod on Twitter, Hit the Deck on Instagram and Facebook. And James, is there anything that I've forgotten?
Absolutely not. You nailed it all. But before I sign off, I just want to wish my dad a very happy birthday. When Gary uploads this podcast, it will be my father's birthday, is January 13th. So I love you, Dad. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Mr. Sajazi. Thank you for raising such a wonderful, upstanding son. I could not do the podcast without him. And to you, the listener, to you, Mr. Sajazi, I'm not so worried about. To you, the listener, I just want to remind you, we talked about at the beginning that the weather's been all over the place. It's it can be very frustrating. You don't know how to dress. You don't know what to expect when you leave the house. You can get a little bit on edge. But remember, when you're out there playing the game, even if you didn't dress correctly, you're sweating, you're freezing, whatever, try and keep right in the back of your head, it's deck hockey. Don't be that guy. Thanks, everybody. No, that's perfect. Great. That's perfect. What do you need me for? You can do this yourself. I've just been riding your coattails for the last year, James.
Right to the ground.